So today, my session is around measuring the value of the Power Platform, and this is something I personally struggle with quite a lot. As a consultant, I find I go into projects, we're well meaning to measure the ROI of a project, but we never kind of get around to doing it. And I think there's a few key problems that I'm going to talk to you about today around kind of what stops us from measuring the value. So to start off with, I'm going to ask people to get interactive with the session today. I've got people online and people in the room. So if you're in the room, scan the code with your phone. And once you're in, give me a thumbs up so I know that people are in here as well. And if you're online, you can use go to menti.com and use the code here as well. If you don't get time to do this, I've got the slide up. A little join at menti.com and the code at the top as well on every slide, so you can join if you.
Oh, that thumbs up. Look at that.
There we go. 9 people on. Good. Just leave a couple more seconds and see if I can take a photo still.
My goodness.
It's always fun. Lots of people this one. Okay, I'll continue, but if you do, you'll see at the top here the code to get access if you missed that last slide. Just to introduce myself, for those who don't know me, I've been in the Dynamics and Power Platform space for about 15 years now as a consultant. More recently, I've gone out on my own, started my own company and started to do a bit of coaching as well. So I have an online coaching course. So I do a mixture of consulting and coaching. And for me, I've really specialised the last few years around Power Platform enablement, so getting customers to build their own applications and empowering people and design as well. So I do a lot of talking about design thinking, and we'll have a bit of a flavour of that today. So a lot of study around that, and I'm also as part of the IDOU teaching team. If anyone's familiar with IDEO as a design company, I've bought design thinking, a popular method for solving problems. Right, so what I want you to do is to test out this app to make sure everyone is working. I just want you to type into the prompts on your phone there, the app, say hello in your language. I love this exercise because it's, especially in this community, right, where we are so diverse. I love it how the word hello ever comes up and you've got we've got emojis this time as well. Very good. You're in, obviously working. There's also a Q&A function on this app as well. You'll see if you want to ask a question, but also just feel free to yell out at me, come off mute if you're online. Well, good. Okay, so I want to start a bit of a poll in terms of your experience with measuring value in the Power Platform projects. And I want you to answer this question, whether you strongly disagree or strongly agree, and please just be truthful. So I think I'm definitely down the strongly disagree end, but value is always measured in each of your Power Platform projects. So when you're doing a Power Platform projects, at the end, you write up a bit of a report of this was the ROI and this is the value that we gained. Do you often do that? I'd like you to be brutally honest. I think people are being honest, which is good to see. And this is something that I've definitely struggled with as being a consultant as well. About, the middle would be sometimes, so we probably do it less often than we should. I think we all know we should. My next question is, we are down that lower end of the scale, right? So what are the challenges or what are the things that hold you back from measuring our platform value? Why don't you do it? Write in some answers there. I'll tell you in the next slide or two what I think the biggest challenge is. A lot of these ones around, you're not sure how to quantify it, right? Like you don't. We are Power Platform consultants, we're like building solutions, but we're not business consultants. We don't really know how to do it. doesn't actually want it. That's interesting. You on that? Moving into the next project, we're so quick from one project to the next. We don't stop and pause to think about, what was the value of that project, and not knowing whose job it is. No clear goals. I like that one. Very good. Okay, so I'm just gonna do some magic and group the responses a bit. Interesting. Okay, cool. So it's kind of reduced down to a few ideas. And what I want to do now is I want you to vote on, out of those things, what do you think are the most challenging or the biggest challenges? We have a couple of votes each. Those votes coming up. People voting?
Yeah, I think I only got one vote.
It's just got a drop down arrow for, let's say, quantification difficulty.
Oh, how about now?
Oh,
Maybe I'll skip this one.
I know it's got plus signs
Giving
next
it-
to it.
okay.
It's better now.
Okay, cool. I skipped along too fast.
Got it.
I'll let you vote.
Still have more votes.
Got two. Maybe one person's voted. Here we go. Go. All right, so obviously skipped you along too far.
Really quite cool that.
It's pretty neat, right? It's especially for a hybrid event where you've got
Yeah.
people in person, people online. We can all interact. Okay, thank you for voting. I want to carry on because I am conscious of time. Okay, cool. I like these because I'm going to focus on some of this today. So, quantification of difficulty. Basically understanding how do we quantify things. Lack of interest. Initial question 5. Lack of interest. Super interesting. I'm kind of keen to hear why did you choose lack of interest as a. Do we think the customers or clients don't want it? Is that or the stakeholders don't want?
It's a change factor. Got to change what they do from and have an idea where to go.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm in qualification.
Back, Mark?
reason is that the people involved in the decisions are not interested in this output. Right, executives are interested in this output,
Yeah.
and they'll fund further activity if they have it.
Yeah.
The problem is the people at the coalface, they're just getting on to the tyranny of the deliverables, the next project, and they don't have to quantify. And then once a year they go to management for funding and realize they don't have the tools to request funding.
Very good. Awesome. Did you want
I'm
to?
just going to say, I think it's that lack of knowledge about what's available. We're not active. Kind of what Mark said, really. If people aren't actively asking for it at the coalface, it doesn't become a priority for you to deliver it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were able to offer it in a way, I think it would become more of a priority. But when they actually understand what you can do, and then like Mark said, following that on to future.
Very good. So I think that brings me into my next poll for you. Why is it important to measure the power platform value? I think Mark pretty much answered it before, but good just for you guys to write in. Why is it important? Those people who are not interested in, or lack of interest in it, don't you that it's really important. You should have a very good interest in it, no matter where you are in the, as part of the project team. All this up around, reflecting and learning. For me, out of all this, I think, and Mark touched on this as well, but for the CEO or the executive or sponsor, right, the people who are funding these projects, they want to know that they're going to get value. And so when you do a project, don't measure it and you go into the next project, you want to get funding to do it, or you want to create this new app or create this new solution. it's way easier to get that funded if you can prove that you've driven value through it before. I do see with a lot of clients with the Power Platform, they've got heaps of apps in their environment, but not you do question what was the purpose of that, and if we can't measure that return on investment or that value, then people do start. I think we're paying for the licensing and everything. They do start to question that. I think licensing is the other side of the coin, right? It can be difficult to get people to invest in, say, pro licenses for power apps. And I think we all know that the value is there, but we've actually got to prove it to those who are going to be providing those licenses. And so instead of us struggling away and trying to build power apps on SharePoint lists and using the free version, we know it's a lot more efficient and effective to have the pro licenses, but you need to show that value. I'm going to skip over voting on that one. So for me, this is personal, but my 4 top challenges that I kind of see is that, first of all, when we're designing goals or metrics to measure, we're not aligned with the business's strategy or goals. And so I often see a lot of apps being built and kind of, why was that app built? There's probably always other sort of problems we could solve that were a bit more important for the business. I think we touched on this earlier on around the lack of know-how to define goals and metrics. So see, like we love building apps, right? But we're not necessarily business consultants, so we don't have the knowledge of how to do that. Also see that because the first 2 are quite tied together and the second 2 are tied together as well. We don't often plan to implement tools to actually measure our metrics. So we don't set goals, and then we don't actually have, well, if we do set goals, we don't have the tools in place to measure that. And then you get to the end of the project and you're too tired to tell the story, or you're jumping on to the next project. So you're going from one thing to the next, right? And you need to be able to measure your value if you want to be able to tell the story about it. And that story is going to then help you get that funding for that next project as well. So that's why it's important. Okay. I'm just going to introduce a couple of concepts, and we'll talk about those first 2 elements around aligning to business strategy, and then also to understanding how to define some goals. We'll use some tips around that. For those who's familiar with this diagram, the double diamond, a few people. Okay, cool. So it's basically a framework to help, describe how to go about designing a solution, right? And the way that it works, you've got 2 diamonds. One's the problem, one's the solution. And I like to kind of use it as a way to frame when we're doing some work, and what sort of mindset should you be in when you're doing this work. And so, first of all, we've got problem on one side. So we can be working in the problem diamond, and that kind of stops that thing where people want to jump to solutions straight away without actually understanding the problem. So we do have this quite a bit of a problem in our industry. We always want to go straight to what is the solution. And then the diamonds are shaped in a way that we have what we call divergent and convergent thinking. So divergent, where the diamonds go out, is where we're going to explore the problem space. So let's talk about all the different problems around this problem space. Then we define, so we converge when the diamond goes in, and we define, okay, this is the problem or the thing we're going to solve. Instead of trying to solve heaps of different problems, we're just going to try to focus on something that's going to add a piece of value, right? And then you move into the solution. You go up with here's our problem statement here. What are all our ideas of how we can solve that problem? Converge again onto what few solutions. The way this works is that typically when you have a project, you'll start with a business problem or opportunity, very high level. And when it comes to defining goals or metrics, we often try to define them right up here, but we don't understand the problem properly. So when we're doing discovery, we're doing workshops and interviews and those sorts of things, that's when we should be asking questions around value metrics as well. And I'll give you some examples of that. And that will help us by the time we get to the middle point here, we will have defined our problem, but also define what are the metrics we're going to measure for our project. And then we get into the solution, we can build into our solution how we're going to measure those metrics. Does that make sense? The theory there? Free to ask any questions if you want. Cool. So there's quite a lot recently in terms of like how do we make coming up with these metrics really easy and using a framework. And so who's familiar with OKRs or objectives by key results? A pretty familiar framework. Basically how it works is you'll have maybe a couple of objectives, and these are a goal that kind of describes what you want to achieve and wants to be inspiring and ambitious. And for each objective, you typically have 2 or 3 or more key results, and these are the ways that you constantly measure the success of meeting your objective. And the way I think about this is that when you're defining your objectives, you've got your business problem that we talked about before, the entry into that double diamond. And then we've got the strategic priorities of your business as well. And we need to have both of those inputs into our objectives so that we're actually trying to come up with solutions that are measurable, fix our problem, but also meet the priorities of the business as well. And often I think this link with the priorities of the business is missing. I'll talk about how we kind of form that link in a bit. Well, I'm going to do this all through a bit of a case study. This is for a construction company. They basically install these big poles in the ground. They're called piles. They hold up buildings. And so they've got for this company, they've got a very strict QA process. So they put the poles in the ground, they pour in some concrete, and they've got a checklist of things they've got to check off, produce some documentation, comply. That's kind of the background of our case study. I want to introduce to you is how do we articulate that strategy for a business? And sometimes businesses have their strategy very well articulated. Sometimes they don't at all. And so if you want to help organisation articulate their strategy in a way that it can be used as input into some of your metrics, there's called a strategy choice cascade. It's from this book called Playing to Win. Anyone familiar with this? Okay. I'm not going to go into the details of this, but just look it up, and it says this really simple way of describing a strategy for a business. Instead of going into the details, I'll just show you an example from our study. Here we go. A lot of words on here, but I'll break it down. Usually you want to start with a winning aspiration. So what does it mean to the business to win? This business, they want to be the #1 pole installation company in New Zealand. And they're going to do that by delivering exceptional customer service and maintaining the highest standards of quality. Where's the play is kind of what the business is all about and what customer segments and stuff they're targeting. What's most important for our objectives are how they're choosing to win. So they're going to choose to focus on customer service. I think brand reputation. For construction companies, probably a differentiator compared to other companies, right? So how to win is how this company is choosing to differentiate itself from other companies. And so these customer service, quality assurance, innovation, and brand reputation are really important aspects of this business strategy. And we'll use that input into our objectives. Okay. And so then here is also the business problems, the other input into those objectives. So as I said, they've got a quality assurance process. This company is, it's paper-based, very time-consuming, lots of duplication of rework. If they get this process wrong, there's huge cost implications. If they pour the wrong concrete, they rip it out. You can imagine that's really expensive. Their paper checklists get dirty and wet. They lose them, so they're losing their data. People in the office who are compiling the documents to give to the customer don't have visibility of what's happening out on site. Pretty typical scenario, right, for some sort of power app on a mobile phone as a checklist. So what we're going to do now is we've now defined what our business problem is, the strategic priorities of this business. We're now going to look at defining objectives. And again, to keep this really simple and help people the skills to write these sorts of things, there is a bit of a formula to this. This is you don't have to stick strictly to this formula, but it's a bit of a guiding a guide for you. So what what you want to do is start off with a verb or an action. That's what you want to do or achieve. And then I think that the why at the end is really important. And the why kind of links back to your strategic goals for your business. And if the why doesn't make sense, then it's a good indication that this is probably not a good objective that you're writing down. An example here is our verb is optimize. We want to optimize the training process in order to increase our product adoption. So this is not actually related to the case study that I've been showing you, but this would be for a company that has a product and maybe they want it to be more widely used in the market, right? And so this is one of the ways that they want to achieve that. The key results, similar again, there's another formula, right, that we can start with. What you're going to measure, and then so it always needs to have a number in it, right? We need to be able to quantitatively measure something. So we've got from X to Y. X is what are you measuring right now? So what is your benchmark? Y is where do you want to get to? And then by time frame, so you need to have these to be time bound as well. You want to achieve this goal by this time frame. For example, here is to increase is our verb. We're facing knowledge-based articles from 25 to 100 by the end of Q4 2024. So that relates back to the previous objective. And this is how we're going to know that we're going to be achieving that objective. One of the questions we get is, I get this often, right, is what if we don't have an X? What if we don't have a baseline? We're not measuring anything right now. That's okay. And I think that happens a lot. And I had a customer recently doing a customer service implementation, had a call center, everything. And we talked about, what do you want to measure? Is it, or what do you measure currently? Is it NPS or customer satisfaction? Is it resolution time? All the kind of the standard metrics, right? And they said, well, we want to measure all that, but we can't, we don't have the ability. So their key result was really about making sure that the system is set up to measure those things. And that was the key result was that 100% of the cases had to go through the system and that they could measure these metrics. And then they would probably set, once they've achieved that, other goals afterwards to start going, okay, well, here's our baseline. Where do we want to get to and how do we want to improve our customer satisfaction score, for example? In terms of OKRs, I think setting these sorts of goals. So I think it's quite good to have examples for yourself or to share with your stakeholders, your clients, right? A lot of information. If you just Google OKR, there's just heaps of information out there. This is from the Microsoft Viva Goals site. So I don't know if anyone uses Microsoft Viva Goals. It's like an add-in for Teams. But basically, it helps you set and manage OKRs. And so it's a lot of guidance here. And there are some examples here. And if you look at what's been written here for each of these OKRs, you'll notice that pattern that I pulled out before in those previous slides around how to put those together. So, as I said before, when we're back that double diamond, we're talking about where we're going to sit in that problem space. We're going to think about all the problems, and then we're going to converge. You can do the same sort of thing with your metrics as well. And you want to brainstorm with your team, with your client, the different OKRs that you could possibly have, and then you want to narrow them down to the one. Yeah. So I think, sticking with our co-pilot theme, and this is working really, really well, is like a basic prompt like this, of telling it that you want to act as a business management consultant. I feed in the strategy and the business problem. So those 2 slides I showed you earlier, the text from that feed into here. And then I say, based on this background information, give me 10 ideas for OKRs, and I kind of give it some parameters in terms of the framework that I want it to use. And what it does is it actually gives out some pretty good results. And in terms of something to start you thinking about, and what you want to do is just look at this list. But what I've noticed at the top few are all pretty good, pretty accurate in terms of the types of things you want to be discussing with stakeholders. You probably want to tweak the things like, so it's making up all these numbers. So you'd want to tweak those numbers to be more appropriate for yourself. But it's a really good starting point to start thinking about what OKRs may be applicable to this problem and to this business based on their strategy. To scroll down to kind of objectives 9 and 10, they wobbly. So you do want to kind of read through this, colour it out. But a really good starting point for those who don't have the knowledge around this, you can start using Copilot or Gen AI as your kind of business management buddy to help you. Once we have all these OKRs, next thing we want to do is we want to choose those. And one of the ways of choosing it is to test these out. And one way to test them is to ask about, what do we think the business value might be? So if you look at this OKR here, decrease the QA documentation time from 5 days to 1 day within 3 months. But what does it actually, that's great, but what does it actually mean for the business? And that's what senior stakeholders are going to, sponsoring the project, that's what they're going to want to know. What we can do here, and this is, carrying on the same chat I was in with Copilot before, asking it, help me determine the business value of what this would be. And then to help determine that value, what questions need to be answered for me to estimate this business value. So what it prints out is a whole bunch of questions that you then need to go away and ask your client, your stakeholders, to get the information to them to be able to measure this business value. What I like about it is it kind of splits it out into different sort of categories, so ways that you can drive value. And some interesting one, top one around processing costs. That's around, how do we just cut costs? There's some more interesting ones around that, I wouldn't have kind of thought about, but this impact on project timelines. What it's leading to here is if you can cut your project timeline down by solving this problem, how many more projects can you do in a year and how much more revenue will that produce for your company? So it's starting to kind of give you hints as to where this value may be. And you can continue on the conversation, right? Answer all these questions, feed it back to Copilot and ask it, can you please generate some equations and stats on business value? And it does, pretty well as well. Again, it's just a guide, right? It's not, don't take exactly what it spits out. It's just a bit of a guide, but it really helps with that kind of that mindset and thinking around this. Okay. So another way to do this is another prompt, and I'm not going to read all this out. We have the slides afterwards, but basically this prompt here again is give me some ideas of what the business value could be for the solution. So I'm asking it to imagine what's the solution to this business problem. I feed in the business problem, and I give it a whole bunch of other context here. But again, now it's out a bunch of suggestions of, these are some of the quantitative results that are possible. You're going to read through these, and you can kind of replace some of the numbers to be a bit more realistic. But it gives you some idea of what are the possible business value that you can get out of it, and also splits into qualitative benefits as well, right? And this is kind of now starting to tell a story that you can then present to your senior stakeholders for more funding. Obviously, you just need to make sure that all your numbers are correct and they all add up and make sense. So what I've just been focusing on now is the top two challenges that we've got. I do want to now talk about, I'm just conscious of time, not having a plan to implement tools to measure and then being too tired to tell the story. I'm going to do a bit of a demo of the business value toolkit. But before we do that, I want to get people interacting again. And if you go back to your phones or to the app, you should be asked, how might we add the measurement of OKRs into our project? So the things like we get to the end of the first bit of the double diamond, we've got our metrics sorted, we've got a problem, then we go into our solution. We don't think about how we're going to measure that as part of our solution delivery. And I think if we plan that in, we're not going to get to the end of the project and go, oh, we're too tired, we've got to go into the next project. this one, yeah, into DevOps, using DevOps as a way of manage them somehow through that. Yeah, include it as a requirement, right? Turn those, some of those OKRs into requirements. Surveys is another good tool, right? If you got you don't have specific metric, but if you want NPS and customer satisfaction score in surveys. To hear more about writing into the statement of work with OKRs and them, I feel it's a lot of work just to get your statement of work written. I'd usually do a discovery statement of work, and that would define what your problem is, and that would get you OKRs. But just have as part of your process. The other, the ways of measuring it is look at what a Dynamics 365 as an app has. So for customer service, there are literally they're built-in reports around a lot of this stuff, right? And so if you're doing to your customer service, they have that. It's quite a rich dashboard. Use that as a way of working with customers to decide what your OKRs are. If you don't have that, I mean, we've got charts and dynamics, you've got Power BI, you've got all sorts of things that, if you write a requirement for it and build it into your project plan, then become part of your reporting as part of that project as well. On. Not going to vote. So what I'm going to do now is to go. Who's familiar with the business value toolkit? Back there. Okay, so this is a relatively new tool. It's part of the Microsoft Centre of Excellence Starter Kit. It's like a side. It's not embedded into the kit. It's not a dependency, but it's a side app as part of the offerings around that. It's been out for a couple of months. I've been a bit of a play with it, and basically what it does is it gets you to tell it about your project and some of the results that you may have achieved. And then it helps you tell a story as well that you can then publish onto a SharePoint site. It's quite a handy little tool that basically, at the end of the project, if you've done all these other things like set your metrics and measured them through, helps you tell that story, and then format it and put into a nice visual on a SharePoint site or in a document that you can then share with your stakeholders. What I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly jump into this. I've got 10 minutes. Okay. I'm just going to show you a very quick demo of it. Fortunately, I'm going to show you the whole thing. But essentially what we do here is I've got a little dashboard here. You come in here and you start with, you can either assess an existing app or you can assess a proposal. So a proposal for a new app that you may want to build. The proposal stuff doesn't really have as much features as assessing an existing app. So here, go through this assessing an existing app, and what it does is it just also shows you a bunch of apps that are sitting in your environment. And I think there's Canvas apps at the moment, unfortunately. This is a whole bunch of, I think I've got a environment with the CRE starter kit set in here. What I'll do is I'll just do this testing app, for example. And what it gets you to do is it gives you some prompts around, tell us about the problem, tell us about the solution, obstacles and challenges, the realized value, and then what's next. So what I'm going to do, I've got a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm going to kind of copy and paste into this here earlier. But basically, you kind of use those prompts and you just type in some information. It doesn't have to be perfect. Copilot generates some of the stuff for me. Got the solution. I'm going to go into the details around exactly this all says, but I just want to show you what the output looks like once you put all the stuff in. You should describe the obstacles and challenges you had during the project, so what you learned, and some stuff around the realized value. And this sort of realized value, this you can start to get some of the stuff Copilot to help suggest what that realized value might be. But you've measured that, the OKRs that you've set and measured throughout the session, and then you say what's next as well. Okay, so once you've done that, you've kind of told your story, tells you, well done. When you're ready, hit the proceed button. So I'll hit the proceed button. Okay, now what it does in the background is it's got a few Power Automate flows which goes through and puts this through. It's got some prompts through Power Automate prompts, and it's starting to analyze all this text, and it's going to compile a story for you. What I quite like about this app is, it's a few quirks to it. You can't undo things or delete things, but you look under the hood and you can see all the Power Automate flows. You can see all the prompts it's using for the Gen AI prompts. Super interesting just to unpack it all and see how Microsoft's built this, because it uses a couple of few different methods, which is quite interesting. What it does, it spits out a story. I always find it gets very, but yeah, it lifts the app maker up a lot. I didn't tell anything about me myself, so it's quite interesting. It pulls this information out. But the idea here is that you go through and then you can update this. It's giving you a suggestion, and you can go and update that the story to be more applicable. And once you've done that, so there's a bit of an approval process here. I've got to enter a code, make sure that I do. That's all okay. Proceed. So basically, going to help us write a story and formats it all nicely. And behind the scenes, the Power Automate has one to go through and basically write the story, and another one that goes through and formats it all. It's quite an interesting concept. And then what we have is it goes through to a bit of a value analysis as well. And in the background, you can set up all of your organizational goals as well. And it basically kind of shows them all here. And it tries to do an assessment on how well the solution aligns with these goals. For some reason, it thinks it aligns with everything really, really well. So I'm a little bit dubious about how that's actually working. But I do know for this one here, a whole bunch of information here, but the project completion time is one that this solution is for, and also aligns with our QA related areas. So I'm going to go agree on both those, and you leave the rest. So you do have to go through and use your brain and go, actually, is AI hallucinating here, or is it actually, telling the truth? So I'm just going to do one of the examples here for time. The one around reduce QA related errors, and what it does is it kind of helps you calculate that value as well. So it's another kind of way of guiding you through that. So here I've got our goal here. This one was to reduce our QA related errors. It's one of the company's goals. And then you can say, okay, I had 10 errors per year, and then after implementing the next year, we only had 5. Then what it has these kind of measures built into the back of the system so that you define, and for each QA related error, it costs $50,000. And so then kind of figures out that reduced our errors by 50%, and we'll potentially save $250,000. So you save that. It's going to go complete. What it does, then kind of creates these value cards. And so when you publish, you can then now publish your story that you saw before and these value cards onto a SharePoint site, and people can go and look at them, search them, and all sorts of things. So it's a library of stories about the value your platform's delivering. For this app here, I do just treat it with caution. It's a little bit clunky. I mean, I think the framework's there and the way it approaches things is quite interesting. But there are a few little quirks to it. You can't easily undo things or edit things or delete things. So it is there as a tool to be, I think, to be enhanced if you want to use it. But probably quite a good starting point to make it easier for people to tell stories about the value they're delivering.
Cool.
But does that have to generate from an app? You had to have a Power App to start that process.
Yeah, which I find quite interesting. I just did a random app and I gave it a completely different name, and it's I'm not sure why it's super tied to the apps, because it only shows Canvas apps and you can only start from one of those. So I think the concepts are there, but it's not a fully production working app. It's a sample app to use.
Version 1.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they're going to be.
Wait for version 2.
Yeah. So it's one of those kind of free things that the PowerCat team build, right? It's kind of sample apps to show you what's possible.
Maybe a future another app.
I think it just needs a few enhancements and then it'll be away. Yeah. Get back to
Cool one.
the concept's really good, right? And I think it if you look under the hood and look at the Power Automate flows, it teaches you a lot of concepts around how to use AI prompts in Power Automate to take unstructured data and turn it into to a nice story. So I'm going to wind up very quickly and let Mark take over. But just the very last interactive piece, I'd like you to think about the 4 things we went through today. Out of those, which one do you want to kind of learn more about or dive into more and use in your projects going forward? Split across. So finding the goals and metrics, I've been super impressed with what you can do with Copilot, right? It becomes your business management consultant sidekick and kind of help you guide you through some of those things. Obviously, you've got to put your own lens and some logic and sensibility across it all, but it's a really good way to help you start thinking about it all. And with that, thank you, everyone.